Good evening, Zephyrs fans. It's the preseason, and as soon as I hit this button over here, it'll take us to the preseason predictions, and you're about to find out what the season's looking like for your San Juan Zephyrs. That's coming up next, right after this. All right, here we go. Just a quick recap in case you haven't been keeping up with the Zephs. We were a new team in the 2020 season in the Premier Baseball League, a new league that was established a level below Major League Baseball. And 4 teams from that league get promoted at the end of each season. The top 4 teams at the end of the regular season get promoted to Major League Baseball. And the worst 4 teams, the worst 2 from the AL and the worst 2 from the NL, are relegated down to this other league, the Premier Baseball League, each season. In the first season, I wasn't running the San Juan Zephyrs, but they won the championship and were promoted to Major League Baseball. That's when I took over as their general manager, and we did not, like all 4 teams that were promoted to Major League Baseball, none of us managed to stick. So we were immediately, after the next season, relegated back to the Premier Baseball League. And the 4 Major League Baseball teams that had been sent down went back in our place because they were the top 4 finishers. So in our third season, then back in the PBL, we won it all again. And we've now been promoted back to Major League Baseball. And we're hoping to stick this time. So let's check out the preseason predictions. And you'll see a couple of things. First of all, we'll be playing in the National League, so you can see the American League here first. I've gotten rid of the divisions in favor of 2 15-team leagues. This just makes it a little easier with teams coming and going each year through promotion and relegation. I don't have to worry as much about where they are geographically. Really don't have to worry about it at all. Just have to figure out how two go in the AL and 2 go in the NL. So you'll see there are 2 teams here in the NL. We have Quebec City and Nashville. And these 2 teams are predicted to finish at the bottom of the standings, meaning they would be sent right back to the PBL at the end of the season. And now I will dramatically scroll down and show you what's happening in the National League. In last place, predicted to finish in last place, you have Columbus, the other team that was promoted to the NL. But then look, in 6th place, your San Juan Zephyrs, predicted to have a record of 77 and 74. So just above the 500 mark. To avoid relegation, not only that, but they would be a playoff team. Because here's how the playoffs now work in this league. The top 6 teams in the AL and the top 6 teams in the NL make the playoffs. And the first and second place team in each league get a bye in the first round, while the third place team plays the 6th place team, the 4th place team plays the 5th place team in a 3-game series, and then those teams move on to face the first and second seeds that had the bye in a 5-game series, and then the league championship is 7 games and the World Series is 7. So I can dive in a little bit more to what the season could look like for your San Juan Zephyrs. And if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the comments. But exciting times here where it's looking like, based on these predictions, the Zephs might have a pretty good season. So let's take a look at who your team is. A lot of these faces will be familiar, though we did dive into free agency a little bit. Like our leadoff hitter, Andrew Benintendi, who we brought in this offseason as a free agent. Peraza was our second baseman and shortstop much of last season. We've got Torkelson, former first-round pick in the first year of the franchise. He's the designated hitter right now. Josh Lowe, who was a Rule 5 guy a couple seasons ago, is back at first base. We went out and got Margot to play center field. He actually was brought in to play a corner outfield position, but he'll be in center field. You'll notice that Jason Rosario is not there. He's actually starting the season in AAA. And Billy Hamilton is not there. He's been injured and missed most of the last 2 seasons. And when he came back from that injury, which had a couple of setbacks, his ratings were not nearly what they used to be. And we had him mostly for his defense, and he just didn't have it anymore. So we actually traded him away. We had to retain most of his salary, traded him for some prospects. Same thing with our former shortstop, Simmons. After an injury, he came back and just wasn't the same guy. His ratings took a big hit, and we retained some of his salary, but traded him away for prospects. Adrianza is back from an injury at third base. Celestino is another Rule 5 guy from a couple seasons ago. He'll be in the outfield as a starter this season. Austin Hedges back with his exceptional defense behind home plate. And then Hector Leon is a guy who I wasn't planning to have up, or if he was up, he was going to be a backup infielder because he's still relatively young, great defensive ratings, not so great with the bat, but I wanted to give it a little more time to develop there. But we had an injury. So Iglesias, our starting shortstop, is actually out for a bit because it wouldn't be a Zephyrs season without some injuries. So we've got one coming right out of the gates. He has a shoulder injury that isn't a good one to have, and he has 2 to 3 months he'll be on the DL. And I'm just hoping when he comes back, he's still the same player. He has a great glove and he hits. So really need him back if we're going to make a run here this season and make the playoffs and avoid relegation. So those are the starters. You'll notice this first guy here in the rotation, a free agent signing. We have Severino in there as our number 1 starter. Castillo's back from last year, as is Lewis Thorpe. And then the last 2, Jordan Montgomery was a free agent signing. And then Jeff Hoffman was, we traded a prospect that I don't expect to really develop into much of a major league player. Traded him for Hoffman after we weren't having luck with some other free agents. There were some guys that were just getting too expensive, and we had to go another direction. We added Edwin Diaz to our already pretty strong back end of the bullpen. So he will be our closer. And then let me go into the pitching. A lot of familiar guys back. Trevor Williams is a guy we got as a free agent with the idea that he might be a starter as well. But right now he's not in the rotation, but he's somebody we can move in there if we need to. Alvaro, I am not even going to make an attempt at his last name. I will learn this before the end of the season. But he was a Rule 5 guy who I thought might be needed for our starting rotation, but he's going to be in the bullpen to start the season too. And I think everybody else, Drew Pomerantz, we got in a trade. The Padres approached us, wanted to trade us him, and I believe a couple other players, prospects for a couple of guys of ours who I really didn't have plans for. And I think they were, let's go take a look at that real quick. So Pomerantz came over with a first baseman, and then we gave up 2 players, Collins and Pinder. Collins, I don't really think he was going to have a future on the team. Pinder was a guy I got for some infield depth and signed to a minor league contract, and I really don't know that he would have been on the team this season. I could have kept him up and as part of maybe sending Leon down for some more development, but I had a few guys making a run at those backup infielder positions. And thanks, Mr. Ree. Yeah, appreciate the comment. I think those are both good arms we've added to the team, and I think that's one of the reasons that we're predicted to do well. And in fact, if you look at the preseason predictions, I think we have a couple of pitchers, but no hitters to be tops in the league. Yeah, there you go. There's an SAJ. So, and Thorpe. So we've got Severino in there, and then we've got Thorpe in there as well. One thing I need to play with is that a couple of things. The game when I played around with the getting rid of the divisions and just doing two 15-team leagues, I didn't realize it, but it appears to have shortened the schedule a little bit. I may keep this or I may play with it in the offseason. But the other thing that's kind of weird is some of these totals don't add up to the same numbers as every team. I just have to make sure everybody's playing an even schedule. So I'll see how that plays out, if the predictions are off or if the schedule is off. And I will fix that as well. You can't fix it once the season starts. You can't adjust the schedule. So we'll see. Something else to talk about at the winter meetings when the GMs get together. So let's look at another spot on our roster here. I will show you. There's a couple other things I'll show you guys. Here's who we have coming off the bench. So this is actually Banfield's a Rule 5 guy I went out and grabbed because it's rare you see a catcher with that kind of ability just sitting out there. So I went ahead and grabbed him for some depth. And I wanted to really have, a strong glove backing up Austin Hedges. And I have some other guys like that I've signed in the minors too. So really trying to add guys throughout the minor leagues with high catcher ability. In terms of some other backups who are in the picture, we've got Taylor is one of our backup outfielders, and he has great defense. Torkelson can also play the outfield. Apostel is a guy we got in the Rule 5 a couple of years ago, and he will see some time as a backup third baseman and as a designated hitter. And then the fourth guy we have coming off the bench is Canelo, who is a guy who really doesn't have a bat, but after our injury to Iglesias, I needed to call somebody else up from the minors, and he has great defensive ratings. So especially on the range and turning the double play as a middle infielder. And I may give him some time at second base too. And when Iglesias comes back, or if I make any other adjustments here, I may end up sending him back down to try to get some time at second base in AAA by force playing him, so that becomes a better option for him too as a backup. But I needed him up right now, so there's no time to force play him down there yet when I need him on the roster. But he's 28, so not a big prospect, and he certainly doesn't have a bat. But I just like having a guy like this as a backup infielder. If I can't find somebody with a bat, and even if I can find somebody with a bat there, I definitely want to have a really strong glove as a defensive replacement option and as a guy that I can depend on when somebody else needs a rest. All right, so those are the hitters. You've seen the pitchers, and then I'll just show you the depth we're working to build up in the farm system too. I'm continuing to try to make some trades, even more now than I was at one point, because I was trying to figure out kind of what I had at first. Who were the guys on my team, giving them a chance to get some at-bats in the minors or the majors, figuring out who I wanted to keep. And as I've started to figure more of that out and get to know some of the other prospects around the league and some guys I want to deal for, I've started to make some more trades, especially, this offseason. And just now, as my roster came into shape for the season, I started to deal a few guys that I just didn't have room for and that I didn't see being big pieces down the road, and picked up some other prospects in return. So actually, let me start by showing you a couple of those guys who are down in AAA and AA. So one guy I got is this guy, Bryce Jarvis, I picked up in a trade, and he's 25. So at some point here soon, he's going to need to get a shot, but he looks really good. And he's been a top prospect in baseball on a few occasions now at this point. So he's definitely a guy who's going to get a look. I traded to the White Sox for him. They were interested in a pitching prospect of mine that I don't think is as good, but we'll see who wins this one. He'd been decent for me in the minors, but I think I got the better end of the deal here in Bryce Jarvis. The only thing with him is he may end up being more of a reliever, but that's fine with me. If he ends up being a really strong middle reliever, that's great. So then I want to show you in AA. Got a couple guys there that I'm really going to be keeping an eye on. One is this guy. He's a 24-year-old prospect I recently picked up in a trade. I traded a guy, Connor Menez, who's a 27-year-old left-handed starter who did not make my team this year. He didn't make the rotation. He was maybe going to be coming out of the bullpen, and they were interested in him, and I was able to get this other pitching prospect who at one point had been the number 17 prospect in baseball. So I traded two pitching prospects of mine that weren't really making it, and I also got a shortstop who looks promising too. Love his defensive ratings, and he might have a bat as well. We'll see how that develops. He's only 20 years old, but he's another guy I think who was on the top prospect lists at different points. He was 24 and came in at number 33 back in 22. So we'll see what happens there, but just trying to go after some prospects and dealing some guys that I don't see, being in the picture for me as major pieces and trying to flip them into some people who might be. And then there's one other guy I got in a trade last season. Let's go over to player development. And I'll show you actually a few guys here. But my third prospect, who's currently 60th in Major League Baseball, this guy, Zach Veen. He looks good. In fact, what I really like about him is he's only 21. I'm going to start him in AA. But, he already has hit his ceiling in some areas, like, for example, gap power, and he's getting up there in contact. There's a little more growth to do with home run power. So I don't know when he'll be up, but he'll start off in AA. He played a little bit in AA for me last year and didn't quite perform like I'd hoped he would, but it was only 25 games. He had been promoted from A. I just felt like he was more than ready to come to bump up to AA with his ratings and gave him a shot there. I'm hoping he looks real good here early in the season in AA. And then I'm in a situation where later in the season, I'm debating whether or not to bring him up, send him to AAA. So we'll see what happens there. And again, he's only 21. So even if it takes another couple seasons for him to develop, that's fine. And then I have a couple other guys that are some prospects for me. This guy, Ortiz, is another starting pitcher. I have him in AAA right now. He did not do well, as you can see right here. He did not do well in some of his spring training outings, but he needs some more time, even though last year he did very well in AA. He needs some more time down there, so he'll be in AAA to start the season. And Juan De Luna was a guy I got as an international free agent signing. It was a year where I actually wasn't that impressed with who I had to pick from, and he was the best guy out there. It was kind of between him and one other guy, and I felt like De Luna beat him in a few categories, and so he's the guy I went with, and he's one of my bigger prospects right now. Looks like he's going to be fast, okay in the field, and hopefully this bat develops as high as these ratings go. So we'll see. One of the things I noticed about him is this: when I checked out his OSA ratings, they were even higher. So we'll see. This is definitely a situation where I'd like my scout to be wrong and for him to be even better and hit these OSA ratings. So another guy to keep an eye on. And then you can see some of the guys we talked about, like Bryce Jarvis is there as one of my big prospects. And then after him, they kind of fall off the top 200 in Major League Baseball's rankings. And I have, guys like Leon, who's up with the team right now. Alvaro here, who, as you saw, he's a Rule 5 guy who's in my bullpen. So some other guys that could definitely develop that are further down the list. So got a few that are interesting. Still kind of, have a ways to go. I definitely need to build this farm system up to a point where I've had it with some other sims I've done, but it was different with this one, coming in with a completely new farm system. The very first season for these teams in the PBL, they picked their teams just from existing free agents to start the season. And at this point now only have the 2020, the 21, and the 22. So 3 drafts under their belt and in the minor league system. And then any other guys they got through free agency or trades. So still have a ways to go until the farm system for some of these teams from the PBL looks anything like what a major league farm system looks like. So that's it tonight. I'm going to keep it short. I'm going to start simming here. One of the reasons I really wanted to put out this update, even though it's on the shorter side for some of my streams, is because I want to press forward and start simming some of these games and see how things are playing out. So look for an update. I'll probably do an update either in June or around the All-Star break, definitely ahead of the trade deadline, because I'd like to do another one at the trade deadline, looking at where we are and who I might need to go out and get. Thanks for tuning in, and go Zephs.